It's 2 in the morning. You should be asleep, but instead you're lying in the dark, scrolling through something you read earlier. A sentence stops you. You read it again. Something about it feels like it was written specifically for you, like someone reached into your mind and pulled out a feeling you couldn't name. So you screenshot it. You save it to that folder in your Notes app, the one filled with other fragments that made you pause. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. And there's nothing strange about it. Some people collect experiences. Others collect objects. And then there are those who collect words. Not just any words, but the ones that land somewhere deep, the ones that feel like anchors in a world that often moves too fast. If you save quotes, underline passages, or return to the same sentences when life gets heavy, it makes sense. More sense than you might think. People drawn to meaningful quotes tend to be reflective. They notice subtleties, feel things deeply, sometimes more deeply than they can easily express. Finding a sentence that captures what you've been struggling to articulate can feel like relief. It's not about seeming intellectual. It's about recognition. Feeling seen by a stranger's words when people around you might not understand what's happening inside your head. There's a reason short phrases feel powerful. Our brains constantly filter enormous information, trying to make sense of chaos. When a sentence distills something complex into a few clean words, it creates cognitive ease. The idea becomes portable, memorable. This is why proverbs exist across every culture. Why poetry says more in 10 words than essays say in 10 pages. The compression itself is part of the power. For many, collecting quotes is quiet identity curation, but not for anyone else. It's a mirror. When you save a quote about solitude, resilience, or the courage to live differently, you're marking something about your values. Over time, the collection becomes a map of who you are and who you're becoming. Every quote saved is a small vote for a certain kind of life. Quotes also serve as meaning-making shortcuts. Life is complicated. Emotions are layered. Sometimes you feel something so tangled you don't know where to begin. A quote compresses grief, hope, or confusion into one sentence, and suddenly the feeling has edges. Someone else already found the words. For overthinkers, this becomes cognitive scaffolding. When your mind spirals, analyzing everything from 17 angles, one clean anchor can be grounding. A quote becomes a place to rest. Instead of chasing every thought, you return to a sentence that holds what matters. Quotes regulate emotion in subtle ways too. Some people save sentences not to analyze them, but to feel them. A line about patience might calm anxiety. A passage about persistence might steady you when you're ready to give up. This isn't toxic positivity. It's having small tools that help you stay grounded. And here's what people often miss. For those navigating uncertainty, quotes offer direction without overload. When the future feels unclear, borrowing someone else's wisdom feels safer than trusting shaky instincts. It's not weakness. It's moving forward when the path isn't obvious. And sometimes, when you worry about what others might think of your choices, a well-chosen quote reminds you that walking your own path has always been valid. Now, there are misconceptions worth addressing. Some assume quote collectors do it for attention. But most never share what they save. The folder stays private. It's a personal ritual, not performance. Others assume it means you lack original thoughts. But recognizing truth in someone else's words requires discernment. It requires knowing yourself well enough to notice what resonates. That's not absence of originality. That's a different kind of intelligence. And there's the assumption it's fake deep. But for reflective people, these fragments are starting points for genuine self-examination. The quote opens a door. What happens after you walk through it is where real thinking begins. But sometimes the habit shifts into something less healthy. There's a difference between collecting words that help you grow and collecting words that help you avoid. When saving quotes substitutes for action, when you endlessly add to the folder but never revisit anything, when accumulation feels like guilt rather than inspiration, something has changed. Some use quotes to postpone difficult conversations, delay decisions, feel productive without moving. The collection grows, but nothing else does. Healthy engagement looks different. You return to a handful of favorites. Reading them makes you clearer, maybe energized. And sometimes a small action follows. You reach out to someone. You start something you've been avoiding. Words translate into life. If this resonates, there are small ways to engage more intentionally. Try the one-quote rule. Instead of saving everything, choose one and let it stay with you for a week before adding another. Take a saved quote and translate it into one tiny action you could do today. Look at your top 10 quotes and notice what values keep appearing. And if you journal, use a quote as a starting point, then respond to it, argue with it, let it lead somewhere unexpected. The impulse to collect meaningful words signals something valuable. It means you're paying attention, looking for understanding in a world that rewards speed over depth. For people who feel intensely, think carefully, and don't fit expected patterns, finding the right sentence at the right moment can feel like coming home. So if your notes app is full of screenshots, your book's full of underlines, if you've stayed up too late because a stranger's words made you feel less alone, there's nothing wrong with you. You're someone who takes meaning seriously. That's not a flaw. That's a gift. This is general psychology education. Human habits vary, and none of this is a diagnosis or a label.